The works. Coruscant's vast, industrial area stretched out for kilometers, as far as one could see, reaching even the Senate district itself. Hundreds of thousands of factory chimneys continued to release plumes of toxic smoke into the air. One could even hear the rumble of whirring machinery in the deep, seemingly bottomless canyons connecting the equally vast stretches of permacrete and durasteel structures. Even above the roar of gunships and firefighter vessels, someone who'd never been to Coruscant before or studied the history of this section would assume a veritable cornucopia of production was being done. It couldn't be further from the truth. The works were built centuries ago, by a wide range of companies looking to make Coruscant a production center unto itself. A force that could rival other worlds and make the heart of the Republic a self-sustaining entity. It also remained one of its most costly efforts, even today. All for nothing. This vast stretch of industrialized land, this promise of a future amounted to nothing but kilometers of wasted space, of unnecessary pollution. The very same companies responsible for the works abandoned it for cheaper, off-world labor and facilities. One of these was Limerge Power, the infamous corporation responsible for turning the planet Tithe into a dead world. The same planet where Kenobi and Skywalker tracked Dooku before their arrival back to Coruscant. It also housed an abandoned building where the same Sith Lord met in secret with his master, Darth Sidious. Right in the heart of the Republic, under the nose of the Jedi Order itself. Not for the first or even the 20th time, Mace's thoughts went back to these facts, stirring unwelcome uncertainty in him as he flew on the gunship towards his destination. They'd started their search for Sidious in this area, working through the vast, dark tunnels underneath, laboriously finding their way through those forgotten places until their investigation halted at Republica 500. The place where the elite of Coruscant lived, senators, the upper class, Chancellor Palpatine. Just when it seemed they might discover Sidious, however, Grievous attacked. Palpatine was kidnapped and in this chaos, the search team left behind was butchered. The trail had gone cold and it bothered Mace to no end. As the gunship crossed through these seemingly endless stretches of factories, several plumes of smoke rose higher than the rest. Squinting off into the distance, through the open troop hatch, Mace spotted the source. Half of the invisible hand landed on a kilometer-long stretch of permacrete landing zone intended once for countless supply vessels to fly to and from the works. It was an absurd sight, half of a vessel surviving entry on a planet with most of its systems annihilated, a vessel never intended to land even in its pristine condition. Mace shook his head, only Skywalker could have pulled it off. For all the faults he found in the supposed chosen one, he could not deny his ability to make what was impossible seem just difficult. It was little wonder he remained one of the only popular Jedi with the ordinary folk, alongside Obi-Wan. Dozens of smaller, fire-suppressing vessels buzzed around the crashed Separatist ship, as fleas did to a corpse. Windu told the pilot to land at the platform where an escape slide stuck out an escape pod hole. From this slide, came Obi-Wan, Skywalker, Palpatine and a frazzled R2 unit who opted to fly his way down. Mace intended to swiftly reach them, to see if they were all right. Yet, even before his feet even touched the ground, he sensed a strange shift in the force, coming from the assembled group. The feeling intensified as he approached them, slower than he wanted to. This shift, this sensation he realized, was coming from Skywalker. Hiding his surprise and curiosity, Mace reached the group. "Chancellor," Mace said. "Are you all right? My gunship is fully equipped with field surgeons." "Oh, no, no," he shook his head, a smile playing on his lips. "Thank you, Master Windu, but I am quite all right. Thanks to these fine Jedi, here. I'm quite well, too. Though, my throat does feel a bit sore from Dooku." "Dooku?" Mace took a single, hopeful step forward. "He was on the ship as well?" "He was, Master," Anakin replied, and Mace once again fought to keep his curiosity in check. "Obi-Wan and I were able to briefly capture him. But we ourselves were caught later, in the chaos. Grievous and Dooku both managed to escape from me." Then, Skywalker bowed his head. "I'm sorry, Master. Truly." Mace tried not to look too surprised. Not by the fact he and Obi-Wan managed to defeat Dooku. Their prowess in lightsaber combat was known well amongst the Jedi Council, as partners or individuals. Not even by the fact Skywalker, Anakin, was apologizing, but the way he did it. The Council had a rough start with him since their first encounter. Over the years, His audacity, his proclivity to break from rules and orders were only surpassed by his ability to attain incredible results, to inspire men in battle and remain one of the brightest stars of the Jedi Order. More times than he could count, Mace heard the words "I'm sorry" from him, and the vast majority of the time, they were said out of mandatory courtesy, rarely with genuine remorse. The fact Anakin kept himself closed off from them, afraid of their insights ever since this first meeting, was another issue. Master Yoda correctly felt what they all did, deep-seated fear in the boy, now a young man. There was a darkness there, one Mace recognized in himself all too well. Where he centered himself through intense self-control, through the creation and perfection of Vatapad, Skywalker always seemed to skirt the line too close. Always coasting along from one battle to another, running away instead of meeting his fears. Though he supported Anakin being accepted into the Order, even vouched for him ascending to knighthood, Mace's doubts were never truly put to rest. Now, Anakin was intentionally transparent to Mace's perceptions of him through the Force, proving the legitimacy of his remorse. Even the shatterpoints, the flaws existing in all things only certain Force users could properly perceive, which Anakin also tried to hide, were gone. It was as if the young man's fear was turned off, as one would a light switch. Many times, I've thought of my own failure of letting Dooku escape on Geonosis, Mace said, surprising himself almost as much as the group. It's not a pleasant feeling. Skywalker's surprise was almost palpable through the Force, though he did a good job of not showing it. Instead, he inclined his head again. Any advice for it? Meditation or sparring? There was an odd smile on Skywalker's face. Devoid of the usual cockiness that had become his distinguishing feature in and out of the Order. Feels like I was doing a lot of that just now. Mace took the statement with a nod, momentarily glancing at Obi-Wan, who only returned a knowing smile. Come, I've already contacted the Senate and HoloNet. You'll be making a statement within the hour, Chancellor. Most certainly, Palpatine, who'd been looking at the conversation between Mace and Anakin with a strange look in his eye, smiled, taking point in their group. The Republic must know I am well. I cannot imagine the amount of terror that ghastly creature Grievous has incited in the innocents of Coruscant. We still don't have even a preliminary estimate of civilian casualties, Mace grimly revealed. No move was made to attack the Senate or the Temple, however. Terror, pure and simple, Palpatine grimaced. So long as that vile creature is alive, there can be no hope for peace. Mace heard this many, many times as of late. The Chancellor, who once advocated for alternative solutions before and in the early days of the Clone Wars, had become more and more noticeably militant. Attempts at possible peace negotiations were forestalled or outright denied. Palpatine wanted the Separatists defeated, to ensure the legitimacy of the Republic and illegitimacy of their enemies. Being kidnapped during an attack at the very heart of the Republic would no doubt intensify his stance. His and of his supporters, whose numbers grew to worrying heights in the Senate. Him and Dooku, Mace said without letting any of these thoughts on Palpatine and his direction slip out. The latter especially. Grievous is the military commander, but Dooku? He's the linchpin of the Confederacy. His capture or death would mean the Sith collapse in a matter of weeks. Possibly even days. Once again, there was a pang of remorse from Skywalker, one he let out into the Force with a simple breath. Mace approved of this. There is more to it, as well. Obi-Wan spoke up again. When we'd captured Dooku, the dark side did not falter at all. If anything, its strength intensified. I fear even with the Count in our custody or dead, we would still be left with a true Sith Lord to contend with. The hidden Sith Lord will reveal himself, Mace replied, tone imperceptibly frosting. Just enough to forestall any further questions about Sidious from him or Anakin in front of Palpatine. The less the Supreme Chancellor knew about this investigation, the better. In the meantime, we must focus on winning the war right in front of us. We must make the capture or deaths of Grievous and Dooku our main objectives. They've been dealt a heavy military blow today and we must press our advantage. They thankfully took the hint. A Jedi shuttle had landed next to the gunship in the meantime. Before entering it, Palpatine's hand laid itself on Mace's shoulder. The warm, friendly smile that had won him so many friends was there, present in spite of the day's madness. I have no doubt the Jedi Order will see this through to the end, Master Windu. I have the utmost faith in your abilities. We are honored to serve the Republic and the Senate, Sir, he placed just the smallest amount of emphasis on the words Republic and Senate. If Palpatine noticed, he didn't show it, outwardly or through Mace's own perceptions of him through the Force. He stayed the same as he ever was, a shatterpoint of the Republic itself, caught in a felt line with Anakin and Obi-Wan both. A felt line of great significance. How significant he could not say. The dark side, as always, clouded true insight into the streams of the Force, surrounding them all in its deepening shadow, even Palpatine. "And I am certain you shall continue to do so," Palpatine replied, seeming to not notice the emphasis. Instead, he entered and the three assembled Jedi followed him inside. The 10-minute flight took them away from the works, the city underneath them shifting from factories to apartment buildings and administration towers. No one spoke. Palpatine scrutinized a datapad feeding him information on the attack. Obi-Wan mildly sat next to Mace and observed the city. Anakin scrutinized it. Chin rested under the knuckles of his mechanical arm. Anakin unintentionally dropped his mental shields. Mace felt the Jedi Knight's feelings because of this. Many Jedi shared them. The dark side hung over this place, poisoning it more than 10,000 factory chimneys ever could. The work of Sidious, to undermine the Jedi. This fog was intensified by the undercurrents of fear and anxiety present on the planet long before a battle droid touched down. In the name of greater security, civil liberties were trampled. Clone forces routinely captured, sometimes right off the street, anyone deemed a potential threat. Almost exclusively they were non-humans. This was part of tightening security on Coruscant, to ensure the safety and stability of Coruscant. To the Jedi, it was only fuel adding to the fire of discontent. A fire that would certainly blaze hotter after today, which will no doubt lead to more powers afforded to Palpatine. Skywalker did not perceive the politics at play. From the emotions Mace fleetingly detected before he sent them off into the Force, he concentrated on the uneasy undercurrents building just under the surface. Master Yoda routinely felt these as well, yet Anakin seemed surprised by this. Almost shocked by his own ability to perceive the universe around him in spite of his superior connection to the Force. It was as though he'd spent all this time halfway blind. With fleeting amusement, Mace wondered how Skywalker would take to detecting shatterpoints if this was a revelation for him. Still, the fact he continued to let go of these ruminations was a commendable thing. The Senate dome eventually grew from a large building off in the distance to covering their entire view. On the Chancellor's private landing platform, there was already a welcoming contingent of over 30 senators waiting. Mace noted them all as consistent Palpatine supporters, most of them anyway. Obi-Wan looked at the group with a displeased squint. Ever distrustful of politicians, that at least had not changed in his months away. What took Mace by surprise again, was a very similar look in Anakin's eye as the shuttle door flung open and Palpatine stepped out. The Supreme Chancellor met them with warm enthusiasm, shaking hands, returning greetings, fully in his element. Obi-Wan made no move to leave his seat. Anakin hesitated to get up, his mental shields brought back up. Not that Mace needed the Force to notice the slight curl of his lip. He looked to his former master and gestured towards the exit to their right. "After you." "Me? Oh no, I've not the stomach for politicians." "Honestly?" Anakin glanced at the assembled group, still preoccupied with Palpatine. "I don't think I do either today." "Really? I thought you enjoyed being the poster man." "Looks like it's still a day for changes." There was a knowing look shared between them. A slight clue as to the origin of this new Skywalker. Mace let them talk as though he wasn't present. "But, I suppose if you want me to take all the credit again, I won't deny your request." "Please do, I'll take care of the report to the Council in your stead." Anakin almost smiled then, another knowing look exchanged between them. Rising from his seat, he took another steadying breath and seemed to calm down. "I guess we're even for Cato Neimoidia now." "Not in the least, that was your fault in the first place." Details, he laughed, bowing respectfully to both of them and left for the crowd with the astromech droid. Immediately, they were on him, eager to speak to the hero with no fear. Once the shuttle hatch closed and the vessel flew to the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan stared at the diminishing scene of Skywalker amidst the senators beneath them until it faded from view. "He's changed," Mace broke the silence. "For the better, it appears." "That he has, quite remarkably too." Obi-Wan turned to his right and smiled. "You should have seen him on the Invisible Hand. His connection to the Force has improved a great deal. It's not just that, he's calmed down, matured. What's brought about this change, Obi-Wan? I suspect you will know in short order. Obi-Wan's smile faltered, his tone sobering. Possibly as soon as tomorrow. Mace accepted this with a nod, eager to hear what transpired out in the Outer Rim. His relationship with Palpatine has changed too. Yes, he leaned back into the seat, stroking his beard. Nary a hint of praise toward him specifically. The Chancellor has never been one to shy away from painting Anakin in the best light possible. Still, Palpatine has never found himself in a situation such as this. Perhaps the day's events have shaken him more than he lets on. That was so like Obi-Wan, always looking to the positive side of the story. It was something Mace found admirable about him. It was a luxury he couldn't afford. When one could see all the fatal flaws in objects, people, ideologies, it was hard not to linger on them and assume the worst. The Clone Wars had done their best to make it all the more difficult. Perhaps, Mace answered neutrally. Though, I suspect Palpatine is too focused on considering how best to use this to his advantage. His advantage? The man loves power, Obi-Wan. Mace's voice turned grim. If he loves anything else, I've not encountered it yet. With every turn of this war, Palpatine amasses more power exclusively for himself. The Senate goes along with him. How could they not? He's all but deified himself in their eyes and in those of the Republic. Obi-Wan frowned. I thought you were an admirer of his? For a time? Certainly. But you haven't been here, Obi-Wan. You haven't witnessed the squabbling, the intensifying corruption. All the while Palpatine navigates through it all with expertise. Always the last man standing, always the one to profit the most. Outside the window, they both saw the smoking buildings of Coruscant. Towers blasted apart or torn down outright. Buildings with living beings who joined the numerous innocents, clones, and Jedi lost in the long bloody war. This is why you didn't want us discussing Sidious in front of him earlier. Obi-Wan broke the silence this time. What's happened on that front? Mace leaned forward, exhaling through his nose, running a hand over his bald head. We were on his trail, Obi-Wan. We tracked Dooku's vessel from the Lee-Merge building in the works. We scurried through those endless, dark tunnels for hours. The trail of Sidious ended at 500 Republica. Where Palpatine's inner circle resides, Obi-Wan concluded with a long, suffering sigh. Is there any hope of performing a questioning? None, Mace answered with grim finality. Palpatine will never allow it. Oh, he supports our efforts. To a point, but I suspect he does not believe in the resurgence of the Sith. This got a more overreaction at Obi-Wan, who stared at Mace with utter disbelief. Not believe the existence of the Sith? How can that? The only actual evidence that we're dealing with Sith and not merely some group of Darksiders comes from Dooku. Who's not here for us to question. And the Zabrak who killed Qui-Gon is dead. All his information dead with him. But surely, Palpatine has no authority to interfere in a Jedi investigation? Could we not simply make our own inquiries in spite of his possible objections? I cannot say, Mace shook his head. Palpatine's authority has become so far-reaching, so absolute, I cannot tell you with any certainty what he is and isn't allowed to do anymore. Though he doesn't show it, I believe he's come to doubt us as we doubt him. Obi-Wan fell into silence, staring at the shape of the Jedi Temple getting closer. Anakin can help us in this regard. His friendship with Palpatine is strong. If there is any Jedi in the Order he still trusts, it would be him. Skywalker cannot know about this. I beg your pardon? Obi-Wan stared in disbelief again. Only I and Master Yoda know of these strained relations. I've told you this because you've proven yourself an insightful, wise Jedi whose skills I believe will be of great use to us in these coming days. Skywalker, however, is another matter. His friendship with Palpatine is precisely why he is to stay in the dark. And what other decisions have you and Master Yoda made? Without the rest of the Council? Mace raised an eyebrow at the undercurrent behind Obi-Wan's words. He didn't expect to hear it from him. Obi-Wan had always deferred to Mace's and Master Yoda's decisions. Did something change in Obi-Wan as well? Something Mace did not detect from his over-fascination in the new Skywalker? Was this a mistake that could not be undone? For all of his deference though, Obi-Wan was also impossibly tenacious when he wanted to be. Possibly more so than any other Jedi in the entire Order. If Mace didn't tell him, he would find out from Yoda. There was nothing for it, the sabacc cards were laid on the table, there was no taking them back now. We may have to move against Palpatine. Move against? Obi-Wan repeated, aghast. The dark side surrounds us, Obi-Wan, he stated with a slight heat in his words. And it particularly surrounds the Chancellor. For all we know, Palpatine could be under the control of this Sidious. Perhaps even a willing ally of his. What do you think will happen when we win the war and he has to let go of his emergency powers? Do you truly believe Palpatine will let this power go back to the Senate? If Palpatine is connected to this Sidious, we will do what we must to protect and save the Republic, Obi-Wan replied in a measured tone. But these secret dealings, these schemes concocted in the dark are not what will bring us closer to a solution. Believe me, Mace, secrets kept between Jedi do nothing but foster distrust and ill perceptions of one another. They are a weight which will crush you, sooner or later. Once more, Obi-Wan's refusal to abide by their choice surprised Mace. It was as though the spirit of Qui-Gon Jinn had taken hold of his old apprentice from the netherworld of the Force. His suspicion from moments ago was confirmed. Something happened out there with Skywalker and neither one emerged from it as they were before. Mace said nothing, looking away and shaking his head. An all too familiar frustration crept it, fouling his mood even more. Could he not even find unity within the Jedi Order? Mace, Obi-Wan's hand rested on his left shoulder. You asked me earlier what helped center Anakin. It was honesty, plain and simple. He carried tremendous weights born from secrets. You've already seen the incredible difference born from simply lifting these burdens off his chest. Do you truly not feel the same after doing the same with me? Mace considered the answer, silently and intently. Looking past the dark thoughts plaguing him these past few months, past his frustrations with the disobedience of Obi-Wan and past his fears for the Republic's very survival, the answer was surprisingly yes. Though the situation tangibly remained as precarious as ever, Mace found himself not at peace but more at ease. As though something bothering him, something he wasn't even properly aware of until that moment, vanished. He felt foolish for not recognizing it sooner. Looking back to Obi-Wan, Windu bowed his head, in acceptance of Obi-Wan's wisdom and admission of his own mistakes. You've spoken wisely, Obi-Wan. Though it wasn't what I wanted to hear. I think it's something I sorely needed. Anytime, my friend, anytime. This must be what it's like for a droid to have Jawas scurrying all over him. Anakin kept his poster-man face on at all times. Smiling and confident, he shook every hand and returned every greeting from the dozens of senators surrounding him. The Supreme Chancellor had gone ahead to prepare for his speech, leaving Anakin alone in the thick of things. Their enthusiasm for him was almost as great as for the Supreme Chancellor. There was a time Anakin welcomed their attention, reveled in it even. Every time he was brought before the Senate, standing in the heart of the ruling body of the Republic itself and spoke about their latest victories, every applause was sweeter than the last. Every praise from either Palpatine or some other representative sheer elation. Particularly if he felt slighted by the Jedi Council for anything which seemed important at the time. It was frightening how even this changed so quickly. Before he even saw the private landing platform, Anakin felt something nauseating from there during his rummage through the Force. Beyond the dark side seeping into almost everything, the terror almost palpable from the citizens below, Anakin felt the true feelings of the senators. What he once thought was genuine joy served only to mask greed and sycophancy. These individuals who surrounded him weren't happy he saved the innocence of Coruscant, as they repeated over again. They weren't overjoyed at the chance to express genuine gratitude and admiration, they were happy at the chance to suck up to him. To bask in his popularity and use it to bolster their own. Most of them, anyway. In this group he desperately wanted to get away from, to see the senator who actually held his interest hiding away behind a pillar nearby. There was one welcome face. Master Skywalker. Anakin's smile became far less strained at the sound of the man's voice. It belonged to Bail Organa, Senator of Alderaan. At 48 years old, the representative of the peaceful world didn't look a day over 30. He was taller than Anakin and in spite of his profession, bolstered a strong frame that would fit a soldier. Amid this rabble, Bail Organa was a different breed entirely, a politician of honesty and integrity. Many times he'd used the man, alongside Padme and the Supreme Chancellor as examples of what politicians could and should be whenever he argued with Obi-Wan on the subject. Before he even expressed it, without even peering through the Force, Anakin knew this man's gratitude was genuine. Organa smiled, stretching out his hand. "It's good to see you again." "Likewise, sir." He meant it too and made sure Senator Organa stayed by his side as they walked closer to the Senate building's entrance. "You have my most sincere thanks, you and all of the Jedi. Without you, I dread to think what would have become of Coruscant." Anakin bowed his head in acceptance of this praise. "Your thanks is appreciated, Senator, but I fear somewhat misplaced. Dooku and Grievous both escaped me. The war could have ended today. And so the fighting will continue." Organa shook his head in dismay. "The Chancellor will not accept anything but separatist defeat. Neither will most of the Senate, from my understanding." Something flashed through Senator Organa's eyes, a look of dismay he couldn't quite hide. A closer look through the Force proved the accuracy of Anakin's guess. He was bothered by the unity of the Senator and Chancellor, but why? "The Senate does as the Chancellor desires, Master Jedi. Though, I believe in this they are wrong to at least not pursue diplomatic solutions. Surely enough innocents have perished in this needless war?" On an old reflex, Anakin wanted to refute the idea that, reaching in accord with the Separatists would add legitimacy to them and anyone who tried to abandon the Republic in the future. He could almost hear the Supreme Chancellor's words buzz around in his mind. Anakin even had arguments about this very same approach with Padme once or twice in the past. But something stopped the retort from coming out. Once again, he keenly and intimately remembered the palpable worries and fears through the currents of the Force. The anxieties of hundreds of thousands he dared to touch. Multiply that to encompass all the denizens of Coruscant. What of worlds such as Jabium who suffered 100-fold worse than Coruscant? Prolonging the war would mean more worlds like that, possibly dozens or even hundreds more. The very thought was 1,000-fold more repulsive than the sycophants gradually dispersing into the Senate building, gradually leaving Anakin and Bail Organa alone. "Perhaps," Anakin started, stopping short of the entrance. "Perhaps their costly military defeat here will convince the Separatists the folly of prolonging the war. This was, after all, their best chance of dismantling the Republic. They'll never get it again." "Perhaps," Senator Organa said with reluctance. "Or perhaps it will only mean an intensifying of the fighting. I don't see the Chancellor pursuing for peace or leniency after what's happened to him today." Senator Organa was more right than he knew. Suddenly, Anakin had grown weary of his company. It was time to see someone he actually wanted to for a change. "It's been nice talking with you, Senator." Anakin forced another smile, shaking his hand again. "But could you please excuse me? There's something I must do before addressing the Senate." "Don't take too long." Senator Organa shook it. "There may be a riot if you're late." Anakin laughed at the joke and watched the man leave. It was when the crowd finally dispersed did Anakin notice someone very familiar looking raise a golden arm up into the air from the entrance. He'd been so preoccupied with the senators, Bail Organa, his own thoughts, catching on to where Padme was that he missed a very good friend waiting for him out in the open the whole time. 3PO, he laughed, approaching the protocol droid he'd built as a slave boy on Tatooine. R2 at his foot let out a welcoming beep as they walked over to him together. Once Anakin closed the distance, he couldn't help but give the droid a hug. "It's so good to see you." "I'm most glad to see you too, Master." Anakin, something very similar to embarrassment was in 3PO's prim and proper tone. "I was so worried about you, sir. There are all such ghastly rumors about." "Don't worry about it," Anakin assured him, untangling his arms away. "See? I'm fine." R2 wept and whistles intensely in the form of a less friendly greeting. 3PO tilted his body toward the little astromech droid. Anakin knew where this was going right away. "Hello to you as well, R2, 3PO answered with a frostier tone. "From the specks of dirt and denting, I see you caught yourself in another round of unnecessary trouble. Of your own making, most likely." R2 answered with a decisively loud, snapping beep and whistle. 3PO jerked away as though someone struck him. Anakin rolled his eyes. The two of them were about to go at it for a while. As fun as it could be seeing them trade barbs at one another, he had someone to see. "Why don't you two stay here and talk?" Wait, Master Anakin. "How will you know how to reach?" "Don't worry 3PO, he waved at him from behind. "I'll know." On the walk over, Anakin stretched out his senses via the Force. just to make sure there was no one else left around. Thankfully, there was no one else on the platform left beside himself, R2, 3PO, and Padme. With a smile, he sensed her behind the massive pillar, excited to see him and worried someone would see them in equal measure. He decided to ease one of those problems. With a quick jog, Anakin ignored something else his Force senses picked up on. Whatever it was, it could wait. When she peeked over the corner of the pillar again, Anakin reached her at long last and started making up for all the months they'd been separated. They kissed for what felt like forever, wrapped in each other's arms. The sheer joy of the moment was only enhanced by the Force. All of the bleak chill of the dark side and all of the negative undercurrents from the people of Coruscant were drowned out by the most wonderful feeling of absolute, perfect joy. Through the Force, Anakin and Padme both became more united in that single moment than in their entire marriage thus far. But they weren't alone in the embrace. The something from earlier also reverberated through the Force, joining them in this wonderful moment of unity. Two small, undeveloped but still aware living presences, emanating like twin beacons. Padme's stomach. Breaking the kiss, Anakin stood from his wife's arms and just looked at her. His heart beating so strongly it was like a battery cannon in his chest. She was surprised by this, eyes scrutinizing his face, her breathing hitched. Anakin did the same for her, a whole range of overwhelming emotions passing through him. Joy, fear, excitement, panic. It seemed for every one thing to make him happy, another momentarily sprang to mind to remind him of what this meant. With a calm, steadying breath, Anakin settled on one of them and smiled so hard his cheeks actually started hurting. "You're pregnant." Padme froze as if General Grievous himself was coming toward her. It took all of Anakin's strength to not burst out laughing when her eyes grew the size of a frag grenade. That would definitely tip someone off about them stealing kisses, in the Senate building no less. She started, gulping a few times, licking suddenly dry lips, never breaking eye contact with him. I am pregnant but... How did you? You married a Jedi, remember? We're good at noticing things. I wanted to tell you. Really. But you were out on the front lines and I didn't want to burden you. Not while you could be. Like I told 3PO, I'm fine, see? He ran a gesture down his whole body. Not a scratch or even new scar on me. She finally let herself breathe again. 5 months, separated for 5 months. It was torture for me too. Even if I had a lot of other things to keep me occupied. She laughed, sounding tired all of a sudden. Yes, it was definitely from politics. So did I, so much has happened while you were away. They hugged again, Anakin pressing his organic hand over her swollen belly, masked by a thick, brown robe. With closed eyes, he felt the 2 little babies inside there, growing every day. He smiled at them. Hi there, I'm your dad. The fetuses didn't speak back, for obvious reasons. But they did. Stretch out to him with their own feelings. At first, they seemed confused, afraid even. But soon enough, they seemed to relax from his touch. Anakin simply stayed there, letting this second perfect moment stretch out between them, a family of 4. He even got Padme to forget her troubles at the Senate. For a little while anyway. Anakin, she whispered, eventually. What are we going to do? I'll talk to Obi-Wan and Master Yoda about it, tomorrow. He didn't bother moving, he was enjoying the sensations from the twins too much. The answer came out automatically, making perfect sense to him. That was until he felt Padme freeze in his arms. What? Oh. He laughed, feeling like a fool. Obi-Wan and I. We had a talk on our last mission before coming back home. I told him everything. Obi-Wan Padme almost screamed before quieting herself. Anakin moved just a bit and saw the shock clear across her face. Obi-Wan knows? He's known for a while, actually. He did see us together on Naboo on my last leave, remember? What did he say? He said, Anakin couldn't stop himself from laughing or smiling again, even while she seemed ready to throttle him for it. Congratulations to me and asked me to say it to you in his name when I saw you next. He wasn't angry? That seemed to calm her down a bit. Obi-Wan's fine with it. I thought he'd be angry or disappointed with me too, but... He smiled wider. He's on our side. Master Yoda too. They've both known about this for years but they didn't stop it. They wanted me to be happy. Does that mean you won't be kicked out of the Order? That did damper Anakin's mood a little, his smile flattering. "I was thinking about telling the council, even before your surprise. Obviously, I'd talk it over with you first, but I don't think they'll kick me out for this. Really, I don't." Once again, the words flowed out of him automatically, with complete certainty. 24 hours ago, the very idea of telling all of this to Obi-Wan alone would have sent Anakin into a whirlwind of confusion and fear. But after what he'd learned, he realized there was very little to fear from the Jedi. His calm seemed to have a calming effect on Padme. Just moments ago, she looked ready to be sick, ready to vomit all over him. Thankfully, he wouldn't have to present himself before the Senate with that on his robes. All right, that's good," Padme nodded. "That's great actually. I was always so afraid for you, afraid you'd lose your Jedi friends and family." "Well," he gave her a lopsided grin. "If the worst comes to pass and I do get kicked out, Obi-Wan said he'll quit right with me too. The twins'll have an eccentric uncle looking out for them either way." "Obi-Wan quitting?" She laughed, the most wonderful one he ever heard. "That sounds suddenly." Her good mood died right before his eyes, replaced by another round of shock. Did you just say, twins?" Just as suddenly, Anakin's own good mood changed. He didn't need the Force to know he'd made a very grave mistake indeed. Anakin didn't gasp when he woke up that night, he didn't lurch upright or stare blindly and wildly into the darkness of their sleeping room. Instead, his eyes merely opened, a slight groan escaping his lips. Padme didn't notice, sleeping in front of him soundly, without a care in the world. With more breathing exercises, Anakin let out the jolts of panic that brought him out of, what was at first, a very pleasant sleep. With each breath, his mind flashed the images of the not quite a nightmare he just experienced. He recalled the sounds of blaster fire, the wild whirring of multiple lightsabers at once. He smelled burning permacrete or stone. Finally, he remembered lightning, painful, a familiar woman's voice scream, and searing lightning flash in his mind. That last sensation brought up very unpleasant memories of Dooku's Sith lightning. These weren't the dreams from 3 years ago either. Images of something that was already happening, like with his mother and the Tusken. Anakin somehow knew, even without any solid evidence, that these were flashes of things to come. A view into the future that made next to no sense at all. Because of the dark side. Whenever Anakin opened himself up to try and reach for the currents of the Force, to find some meaning to the puzzle, the black, chilling fog stopped him. Well, if he couldn't find the answers, he wouldn't let these premonitions ruin his first night together with Padme or their children. Instead of falling into a regular sleep, Anakin slowed his breathing down, remembering the exercises done to enter meditation. He'd never been particularly good at the process, preferring various forms of moving meditation to calm himself down. But before, he didn't have 3 wonderful people right next to him to ease the process. Instead of meditating on the clouded Force, Anakin reached out to something purer, something untouched by the dark side. He let the pure joy of being with his loved ones wrap around him, a blanket pushing all dark thoughts aside. For the rest of the night, Anakin Skywalker rested even better than before the flashes woke him up. In the night sky of Coruscant, one could make out hundreds of thousands of stars. Under these stars was a boundless array of lights from buildings, tall and small, and vessels perpetuating the traffic of Coruscant. Amidst these lights were the incalculable denizens of Coruscant, each one a beacon, a presence of sorts within the Force. Amidst all these lights was an area of a pitch, absolute blackness, situated within the Chancellor's suite. Inside this place, was a shadow beyond any shadow to ever exist in the galaxy thus far. From this place, Darth Sidious stretched his influence throughout the world of Coruscant, casting his endless blanket through the Force as a vapor-eyed creature of infinite tentacles would at its prey. Through these tentacles seeping into the currents of the Force, Sidious attempted to cast his influence back into one particular individual, Anakin Skywalker. Since the moment he met the boy, his strength in the Force was readily apparent to Sidious and Plagueis both. What was also more obvious in their brief, first meeting on Naboo over a decade ago, was the boy's fear. For all of the Jedi's platitudes, their antiquated notions of what the power of the Force could and should be for, fear did indeed lead to the dark side. Sidious made it his business to stoke this fear, as one would stoke a small flame by casting wood into it. And grow it did, fostering feelings of bloated ego, pride, jealousy, uncertainty, all of which would reach a crescendo of the Force, a final musical note to signify the Chosen One's fall and his ascension as the next Dark Lord of the Sith. A perfect apprentice for the perfect embodiment of the dark side itself. Yet, from the moment Kenobi and Skywalker exited hyperspace in the battle Coruscant, Sidious knew something had gone awry. Somehow, in ways he could not truly decipher, Skywalker's fear was thoroughly annihilated. His ego tempered, his anger put on a leash, and his connection to the currents of the Force unblocked for the first time in his life. Seeing the boy fight both Dooku and Grievous with dispassionate aggression, instead of an unconscious fury waiting for validation, for proper release at long last, was evidence enough of a great, unwelcome shift in his plans. Oh, there were flashes of the old Skywalker there, but they were quickly stamped out or so severely lessened there was nothing to be done with them at all. Now, Sidious felt a cold fury burn in his chest, at himself. In another attempt to break down what Kenobi had done, he attempted to breach the subconscious of Skywalker now as he did 3 years ago. To find something to push him back into a far more favorable, less stable state. Instead, Skywalker awoke, concerned and shaken, but not for long, blanketing himself in something not even Sidious powers could penetrate. As he brooded on these recent events, his mind awhirl with scenarios and possibilities even more numerous than the stars, lights or denizens of Coruscant itself, Sidious was coming to the very disappointing conclusion that Skywalker was a lost cause. However, he would not have come so farther than any Sith Lord before him, if he allowed obstacles to get in his way so easily. After all, if one Skywalker was unusable, there were more on the way. Anakin pulled himself out of the trance just before the crack of dawn with a silent sigh and a smile. The meditation worked absolute wonders, no premonitions of doom woke him up again, and he felt fresh, well rested. It was possibly the best sleep he'd experienced in years, and it didn't even technically count as sleep in the way most people in the galaxy thought of. Padme was still asleep but smiling too, nuzzling her back against his chest. She was practically radiating outwardly and through the Force. Evidently, he wasn't the only one to have gotten something enjoyable out of the meditation. Gentle as a feather, Anakin pulled his right arm from under her, slipping out of bed without making a sound. He knew Padme would have a busy day meeting with other senators such as Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, to name a few. She'd need all the rest she could get. She certainly deserved it after a long, initially heated conversation the night before. Primarily about him spoiling the surprise of the twins, something she told her private medical droid to explicitly not reveal under any circumstances. Anakin accepted the berating, promising not to reveal the genders of the children, which seemed to mollify her. They discussed what he would do with the Jedi Council. Anakin stuck to what he thought was right. He would speak with Master Yoda and Obi-Wan both, then address the rest of the council about the twins and his marriage. Though she wasn't entirely convinced, Anakin remained certain things would go over fairly well on his end. Perhaps he would be kept from becoming master for a while longer. Though in truth, his hidden desire to beat Mace Windu's accomplishment of being the youngest Jedi invited into the Order's ruling body didn't strike him as very important anymore. Padme faced a less certain future. A senator marrying a Jedi would cost her greatly, possibly even her position as a representative of Naboo. It would be a scandal, particularly with him, the HoloNet feature hero with no fear, and Padme, the outspoken fighter of not just the Republic but its core values in the Senate. For that, Anakin could do nothing more but promise that they would weather that particular storm together, no matter what. Then there were those premonitions to consider too. After a quick, hot shower and getting his cleaned robes from yesterday, Anakin grabbed a spare cloak, bade farewell to 3PO and headed for the Jedi Temple. R2 went with him, practically arguing with 3PO until they'd reached the secret turbo lift of the apartment building. Unlike most of the Coruscant upper class and political body, Padme resided outside of 500 Republica. In the Senate apartment complex given to her by the Naboo embassy, it made it far easier to see each other when circumstances afforded them the opportunity to. However, the building also held certain surprises. One of them was a cache of weapons Padme built inside the apartment. The other was a hidden turbo lift, leading to several levels within the apartment building itself and reaching to the bottom echelons of Coruscant as well. After the assassination attempts on her 3 years ago, Padme wanted a good way of either fighting back or getting out of the chaos quickly and safely. No one knew of this turbo lift except the two of them and her chief of security, Captain Typho. You'd have an easier time flying through a sun than getting this secret out of that man. With his hood on and hands in their sleeves, Anakin rode the turbo lift all the way to the base of the apartment building, emerging from a sliding wall leading to an alley. From there, he planned to walk a fair distance away, then hail a shuttle for the temple. As was always the case, even a day following a droid invasion, Coruscant's population was teeming with millions upon millions of people in the crowded streets. Humans, near-human, humanoid species and variants of droids of all colors, ages moved in vast, thick hordes this way and that. It was an overwhelming sight to behold. Anakin distinctly remembered how awestruck he was by the fact so many people could exist in one place. With a smile, he remembered his reaction to Obi-Wan revealing there were hundreds of levels beneath even this. But the smile didn't last long, for even here, the recent scars of battle were obvious. Bridges connecting one side of a chasm to another were smashed, a vulture droid's body was pinned and in the process of being removed from the inside of a store by Republic engineers. Pieces of broken glass littered the ground, as did countless broken windows even dozens of stories up in the air. But even while intentionally dimming his perceptions of the Force, what stuck out to Anakin was the paranoia. No matter where he turned, there were clones, always with weapons ready, scanning through the crowd. Observation droids buzzed through the air, covering for any blind spots the clones couldn't. From what he could discern, both groups were focused primarily on any non-humans who in turn, radiated with a terrifying fright whenever a trooper seemed to so much as glance in their direction. Whenever one of them was stopped by a trooper, they stood there, either frozen or shaking from fear. An indignant shriek caught Anakin's attention. Looking over, a squad of clones was surrounding a moon. The man frantically looked from one soldier to the other, while the commander, whose armor was painted with stripes of red, held a datapad. They were putting handcuffs on him. No. Please. You are under arrest, sir, the commander spoke with a dispassionate tone, not even bothering to look at the man. Any attempts at resistance will be severely punished. I suggest you do as you're told and come in quietly. But I've done nothing wrong. I was merely going to work. When one trooper struck the tall moon in the knee, prompting a pained yelp, Anakin was at the scene in an instant. Pushing his hood away, he took a calming breath, walked up to the commander. What's going on here? He crossed his arms, addressing the commander. He looked up from the pad and stopped. Anakin sensed a flash of recognition pass through him, though outwardly, the commander seemed as dispassionate as ever. Why is this man under arrest? More and more bystanders were stopping to watch the scene unfold, putting a good 20 feet of distance between themselves and the arrest site. In the back, Anakin already heard whispers of it being him, the hero with no fear, the Anakin Skywalker. He ignored the publicity, staring hard at the clone commander. As per the Enhanced Security and Enforcement Act, the trooper began with automatic ease, clearly not doing this particular speech for the first time. Clone troopers are allowed to detain and question any individuals deemed suspicious as a potential threat to the Republic and the safety of Coruscant. I'm a baker. The moon shouted, mouth trembling. Anakin sensed he was sincere. Suspicious individuals are most frequently of a moon, Geonosian, Neimoidian and Gossam persuasion, sir. I voted for Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Twice. And how many of these suspicious individuals, Anakin calmly asked, have turned out to be an actual threat to the Republic? Arrest information of such nature is classified. I cannot tell you that, sir. Anakin blinked and felt the distinct urge to laugh. I'm a Jedi Knight, Commander, a general in the Grand Army of the Republic. For which I am extremely grateful to you, sir. However, that does not change the fact this information remains classified and requires higher authorization to access. And I were to tell you that my Jedi senses tell me this man is in fact innocent? Jedi senses are not seen as valid evidence, sir. Really? I think it is. With the slightest wave of his organic hand, Anakin let the suggestion ingrain itself into the commander's mind. It was a gamble. Clone troopers were of a strong mind, just as their originator Jango Fett was. But recently, his connection to the Force felt noticeably heightened, so it was worth taking a shot anyway. The commander seemed to struggle against the suggestion. Anakin momentarily feared it wouldn't work, however, the Force came through for him. I think it is too, sir. Men, he shouted. Let the man go. The troopers handcuffing him looked at their superior for a few silent moments. Sir, are you sure? This isn't standard procedure. I said let him go, he's a baker. Unless you think the Seps intend to hide bombs there? No, sir. They unshackled the Moon, who immediately rubbed his wrists. You're free to go, now, step aside, citizen. The commander stepped forward and returned the man's identification datapad. Of course, officer. The Moon bobbed his large head up and down in an almost comical fashion and took the datapad. The assembled crowd started dispersing, loudly chatting about what they'd just seen. Anakin heard it in passing and liked none of it. One comment that particularly stuck out to him was a Jedi siding with Seppies, nowadays. Deciding that the matter was concluded, Anakin sighed and decided to move on. He wanted to speak to Obi-Wan and Master Yoda before the day's council meeting on the Outer Rim sieges began. He wanted to square things with the ruling body as well. 2 droids with 1 lightsaber slash were better than 1 after all. Before he could hail a cab, however, he sensed the Moon approach. Thank you, Master Jedi, he bowed, looking distinctly less sick than just a few moments ago. Just doing my job, sir. Anakin inclined his head and smiled at the man sympathetically. He momentarily thought about ending the conversation though when a thought stopped him. Say, could you tell me about these security checks? The Moon suddenly stiffened mid-bow, a fresh surge of worry reverberating from him. Don't worry, sir. You're not in any trouble. I've just been away for a while. I haven't had a chance to see the Security Act in action until now. I truly don't want any trouble, Master Jedi. Think of it this way, if I wanted you to be in trouble, I would have let those soldiers arrest you. The Moon stood back up. Anakin's logic seemed to calm him back down. Well, if I may speak plainly, I'd like you to. R2 backed him up with a happy whistle. Then I must voice my displeasure with it. For years now, things have been getting harder and harder for people like me here. Several of my brothers and sisters have abandoned Coruscant outright after one of them had their home raided. Raided? What for? The Moon shrugged. A routine check, they said. There are a lot of them nowadays, Master Jedi. Clone troopers can, at any time of day, barge into your home, overturn the whole place. If you're lucky, they just leave you with a warning. If not, detaining and questioning, Anakin concluded, almost clenching his robotic fist before calming himself down. Is this exclusively done to people whose species are at war with the Republic? No, sir. I've heard of Thrandoshans and Rhodians being arrested on the street as well. One of my neighbors got into a fight with his wife in the apartment next to ours. He stormed out and then. The Moon's voice fell into a whisper. We never saw him again. His wife only found out he'd been arrested by checking herself. I've heard they don't even tell you this much now. R2 let out a sorrowful whine. Does the Supreme Chancellor know about this? No? The Moon laughed. Palpatine has been enforcing these new security laws for years now. Whenever someone in the Senate seems to oppose their tightening, they're all over it and the Security Act is strengthened. I dread to think what will happen after yesterday's attack. Once the war is over, things will return to normal, sir. I dearly hope it is so, Master Jedi. Bidding farewell to the Moon, Anakin hailed a shuttle and was flying toward the temple. All the while, in complete silence, he tried very hard to calm the slight discomfort in the pit of his stomach. The one telling him that somehow, things weren't going to be normal quite so easily. This fear abated as Anakin neared the Jedi Temple. 5,000 years old, unlike any other building in the entire rest of Coruscant, the 5 spires beautifully reaching into the sky, the new day's sun shining through them. Anakin hadn't realized how much he actually missed this place too until just that moment. Instructing the droid shuttle pilot to land in one of the mid-level platforms, Anakin thanked it and transferred some credits over. He and R2 reached a 2-way intersection shortly thereafter. Why don't you go check if our new starfighter is ready? All right. I need to see Obi-Wan and Master Yoda. R2 rotated his dome and let out a series of affirmative Faru weeps. I'm sure you'll give them a piece of your mind if they mess something up, he laughed. See you later. Reaching out through the Force, Anakin could sense Obi-Wan was still in their old apartment just a floor above. It was once used by him and Master Qui-Gon. That was good. It meant he could see him first then find Master Yoda. With a slightly hurried walk, Anakin made his way up, his eyes examining the temple's interior, taking the whole place in. How many times did he litter these hallways with discarded droids? How many times did he run down them to be the first man to a lightsaber lesson? Passing by a group of excited younglings only made him all the more nostalgic. By the time he reached the apartment, Obi-Wan was walking out, looking rested and cleaned up with fresh Jedi robes. Faintly, Anakin smelled morning tea from him. It was a favorite tradition of his every morning, when he wasn't able to indulge so much in dirty, rain-filled trenches. "Good morning, Master." He bowed. "Ah, Anakin." He smiled, bowing back. "Good morning to you as well. I trust your evening was most pleasant?" "More or less." Anakin smiled too. "I'm glad you're up already. I know how cranky you can be if you can't sleep well." "I am not cranky, simply mildly irritated." "Good thing you're not. I'll need your help, yours and Master Yoda's. About you know what." "Say no more." Obi-Wan gave him a friendly pat on the shoulder, the pair walking down the direction Anakin just came from. "As it happens, I've got a need to see Master Yoda as well." "Anything serious?" "Very much so." Obi-Wan's tone considerably frosted. "Things have changed here, Anakin. In ways I do not like at all." "Yeah," Anakin muttered. "Me too." Count Dooku of Sereno sat in the private quarters of the Geonosian dreadnought. His knees bent, arms folded across them and eyes closed. He had awoken hours ago, well before the escape pod reached the vessel and headed towards their next destination, Utapau. A remote, fringe outer rim world, Utapau was never a member of the Galactic Republic and had no interest in the Clone Wars, preferring a stance of neutrality. A farcical notion. In war, there is no such thing. You were only neutral so long as one side or another didn't require you for their purposes. Grievous proved the truism of this when his forces conquered the planet mere weeks ago, using it as a temporary safe haven for the leaders of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. It was an ideal hiding place, one of Grievous' more inspired machinations, Dooku thought. On the surface, it appeared to be a lifeless, barren rock, made uninhabitable by scouring hyperwinds. However, upon closer examination, life very much persevered even in such a hostile environment. Thousands of sinkholes littered the world, the size of inverted mountains. Inside, there were miles upon miles of technologically contemporary cities built to house the sapient and non-sapient populations of Utapau. They were, of course, no threat to the occupational force quelling any notions of resistance or rebellion. The Leadership Council had converged onto the world as separatist forces were gradually pushed to the very borders of known space. Through this exercise meant to focus his abilities to draw the force inward into himself, Dooku consistently clenched and unclenched his recently wounded hand, driving into his own knee. Though the wound was long since healed by his own abilities in the force and back to treatment, Dooku still felt the pain there. His mind flashing to the battle on the invisible hand. The depths of his defeat, the prowess of Kenobi and Skywalker and the humiliation of his capture. Grievous spoke about it, with obvious hesitation. Of how Skywalker had tied him as one would the basest of creatures and carried him about, in open view of Lord Sidious and Grievous no less, until their narrow escape from the separatist vessel. Though outwardly he appeared every bit the man of his deserved station, his trained aristocratic excellence, inwardly Dooku seethed in a cold fury. Every clench and unclench of his hand sending a fresh jolt of pain and further anger. There was a time, long ago, when Dooku would have focused these emotions into himself and allowed them to flow outward into the Force, to bother him no more. Foolishness. He would keep this pain for as long as possible, let it nurture his connection to the dark side. For a third round with Skywalker and Kenobi, he very much relished the opportunity to have. A faint beep of the room's holocom interrupted Dooku's musings. Clenching his fist tightly shut, the Count pressed the accept key. Instead of finding Grievous on the other side, it was Lord Sidious. Clad in black robes, masking all but the underside of his face. Even star systems away, just his image radiated power and authority. "My master." Dooku knelt at once, chiding himself for not doing so at once, for even a momentary breach of respectful courtesy. "Lord Tyrannus. I am most pleased to see you up and about. How is your sword hand?" Dooku's knuckles almost cracked. "Quite all right, my lord." Good, he drawled out. "The Senate moves as I have foreseen. In spite of recent complications." The imperceptible frosting of his tone with the final word sent an involuntary shiver down Dooku's spine. With this newest amendment, Sidious continued, I shall attain direct and supreme command of not only the Grand Army of the Republic but also the Jedi Order itself. How soon will it come to pass? Perhaps as early as this afternoon. Dooku was not surprised by this in the least. Sidious' command of the Republic's Senate was of such towering height they were little more than living, breathing formalities to his authority. With this final stroke of political maneuvering, Darth Sidious was for all intents and purposes, ruling the galaxy. Even with their recent troubles, the Jedi Order had already lost and they didn't even know it. Still, there were matters to conclude before the Sith Empire could begin. How may I serve you, my master? Though our victory is beyond doubt, a handful of matters require resolution. When you arrive at your Tarpao, you will instruct the Leadership Council to remain there with Grievous. Afterward, you will head for the Mustafar base under the pretense of performing another task for me. Another Jedi trap, Dooku realized immediately. With the attack on Coruscant, both the public and the Jedi would demand a swift end to the conflict, by any means necessary. Information, provided by Sidious would trickle through Republic intelligence, eventually reaching the Jedi Council. They would see a golden opportunity, all of the Separatist leaders in one place. With a single battle, the Confederacy of Independent Systems would fall. Even if Dooku himself remained unaccounted for, the deaths or captures of Grievous, Gunray and the rest of them would end the war regardless. The head of a state was worth nothing at all if the rest of the body was cut off from it. Emboldened by this turn of events, this and in all but name, they would make their move against Palpatine and secure their own downfall. Once again, Dooku remained in silent awe behind the machinations of Sidious. How quickly he managed to hatch such a scheme, a perfect Jedi trap. Yet, the Count's wonder was tainted by something. A very simple fact gnawing at the pits of his stomach and releasing a flash of searing pain from his wound. What troubles you, Tyrannus? Sidious's voice drawled out in a voice that seemed to simultaneously reverberate from outside and inside Dooku's own mind. Once more, his practiced courtesy kept the shiver from showing. Ah, Kenobi, and Skywalker. You wish to fight them when they move to apprehend you? Yes. Do not be so hesitant, my apprentice. Conflict is the way of the Sith, as is its pursuit. Your desire for revenge is commendable. However, the brief amusement in Sidious's voice vanished. It does not serve our purposes. Should events transpire beyond our control again, that may change. Until then, you must wait and see from safety. Bask in the dark side of Mustafar, my apprentice. I trust no one else to do what must be done there. The droid army will be deactivated, Master. The Master Control signal is in my grasp and the Leadership Council is none the wiser. I expected no less. Should Gunray or the rest of the Separatist leaders try to voice any objections, I will let Grievous deal with them. Dooku almost smiled. There was no love lost between Grievous and Gunray. The cyborg alone would suffice in keeping them on Utapau, where they may give their last contributions to the grand designs of the Sith. Though, a part of him, buried very deep down where even Sidious may not sense, the Count hoped one more alteration occurred to their plan. That either Kenobi or Skywalker or preferably even both, escaped to Tarpau when the trap was sprung and somehow, some way found a path leading them to Mustafar. If Lord Sidious noticed, he made no such awareness apparent to Dooku. How else might I serve you, Master? Once you arrive at your Tarpau, command Grievous to avail himself of his most capable Magna Guard forces. They shall use what secret hyperspace lanes we still know of and the Jedi do not, to transport them to Coruscant. Do you require aid, my master, for when the Jedi strike? No, the amusement in his voice returned. I will deal with the Jedi myself in due time. Though, as you shall come to know, the droid's mission will be of no smaller importance.